Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Resilience Key podcast. I'm your host, Steph Corbell, and if you're looking for real life, practical advice on personal growth that actually works, you are in the right place today. This is season 2 of the podcast, and in this season, I'm exploring stories from my life as a tattoo artist and business owner to illustrate a bunch of life lessons that I've learned along the way. If that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I release a new episode every other Friday morning. As a tattoo artist for the past 16 plus years, one thing I hear talked about relentlessly on social media by other artists is this idea of the tattoo life. This might conjure up a bunch of random images for those of you who may have a couple of tattoos. You think of us living on the edge, maybe, a bunch of artists going out and partying all the time, rolling into work late, making cash, and just generally leading this edgy artist lifestyle. And honestly, a lot of the stereotype is true for certain kinds of tattoo artists, but for any professionally leaning artist, we're all about working hard and trying to carve out some kind of balance in our lives. You're not going to catch me going to bed after 9 p.m. if I can help it. If I am going to put permanent marks on your body for the rest of your life, I'm going to be well rested and in my right mind beforehand, just saying. Tattoo life. Well, according to tattoo artists, that amounts to something more than the simple stereotype I was just talking about. Tattoo life means that you work extra hard for the dollar and you're always hustling to get more folks in the door. There's always an ebb and a flow to tattoo life. There are busy times, such as when folks get their tax refund checks and blow most of it on a tattoo. We artists, we like those times. But then there are slow seasons, and that's usually between Halloween and January. It's a significant part of the year. Clients at that time are usually more concerned about saving money to buy presents for the kids over the holidays. They're not spending money on themselves. How an artist deals with the slow season says a lot about them. For me, I tend to catch up on designing pre-drawn tattoos. Maybe I'll take a course on graphic design, or I'll even revamp my own website. I can typically afford the slow season, and sometimes, honestly, I actually welcome it because I try to save money for it, and I anticipate that it's going to happen each year, and it gives me a little bit of time to myself. But for other artists, that hustle, it never, ever stops. With that type of artist, they talk about tattoo life a lot. You can typically spot these tattoo life guys a mile away. They're the type to list their personal cell phone numbers on their Instagram accounts, or even worse, they friend all of their clients on Facebook. Hey, call me, I've got availability today. They're also the types to be cash only. They're proud of not paying their taxes and they bury all their cash. And they lead a cash only lifestyle as well, which on the surface might sound good, but you can hardly be a functional adult in the United States like that. This type of artist lives in a constant feast or famine mode. When the slow season rolls around, they panic because they haven't saved their excess earnings during the busy season, so what can they do? There's no way out of it but to just keep working harder and keep on hustling and never stop hustling. Recently, I ran across a relatively new influencer on Instagram selling online courses on financial planning specifically geared toward tattooers. He was a tattoo artist himself, and he had worked his way up to being a studio owner and realized that there was no way for him to ever take a breath. He had to keep hustling to make money. Owning that studio, it was a constant hustle. So he went back to school and he got certified as a financial planner. And online, I actually agree with most of the stuff that this guy says. And in fact, most of his advice is stuff I have done myself. I say more power to him for finding a way to generate passive income outside of tattooing. But there's been this huge backlash against him in the tattoo community with artists calling him a sellout, he's not a real artist, that kind of thing. Why is this good information this guy is providing such a threat to the tattoo community? I mean, personally, I think if you don't like it, don't look at it. Learning how to plan for your financial future without having to constantly hustle and grind, I mean, that sounds good to me. I think the backlash is partially due to this human tendency to praise how hard we toil for little or no payout. And then when there's this possible solution to make our lives easier, as outside of the box as it might seem, we resist it because of our pride. We get stuck doing the same things over and over again, thinking if we just work harder in time, it's going to pay off magically. And unfortunately, life does not work that way. If you're doing something over and over again that isn't giving you returns right now, doing more of that in the future is not going to help. So why do we get stuck in this mindset? I think there are a few reasons. One, it's hard to admit to ourselves that whatever we're doing isn't working. It's hard to get raw and honest and evaluate what we actually are doing. It makes us feel like we've failed when our efforts haven't paid off. So we end up just doubling down on what hasn't worked in the past. And then, two, here in the US, I think we're all victims of this bootstrap mentality. That's the whole ethos of we have to elevate ourselves without help from anyone else. We have to work hard and get ourselves out of our problems all by ourselves. But let me ask you something. Can you really work any harder when you're completely stretched thin? And if something has stretched you so thin that you're burned out, is the solution really just to do more of it? Can you add a 25th hour of the day to work even harder doing the same thing? No. We all need to stop glorifying this hustle mentality. I get it. I believe in hard work, but when it comes to making big changes in our lives, we have to learn how to work smarter, to streamline, and to be more efficient finding things that work for us and our goals, rather than simply hustling harder, doing the same thing over and over again. So let's explore some tools we can use to get out of this trap. This is a challenge for me too, believe me, so I'm doing these exercises right alongside you even today. One, get honest with yourself about what's not working with what you're currently doing. In my line of work, for example, I always seem to think that I can increase my revenue by creating lines of merchandise. Sure, that sounds totally possible. I personally love creating clothing designs. However, here's the issue. What I want to see on a line of clothing might not be what everyone else likes, and there's a startup cost to generating merchandise. Plus, you have to anticipate what sizes people are going to end up buying, and then you have to buy the blank shirts wholesale and have them printed. And after that, you end up with a bunch of excess inventory of the stuff that doesn't sell, and people are asking you for sizes that you ran out of, but you have a bazillion extra smalls that no one wants. It breaks my heart to say it, but after about 5 or 6 times, I realized I had to do merchandise a different way if I actually wanted to make some money doing it, which is, for me, with a print-on-demand service rather than making it all myself. Now, that's just one practical example that's from my business. And believe me, it was really hard to admit to myself that what I was doing wasn't working at all. While this is specific to my own business, you can easily compare that to a personal situation. A lot of folks, for example, will sink time into relationships that don't work for them over and over again, having the same arguments over and over again, making themselves miserable over and over again, and they end up creating this cycle of dysfunction and an emotional roller coaster ride. What needs to happen? Something has to shift for both the parties to move forward. Something has to change. Maybe it's therapy. Maybe it's setting boundaries. Maybe the relationship has to end. Something has to change for things to change overall. 2, learn to think outside of the box. In the box thinking is honestly why a lot of personal growth stuff doesn't work. It consists of simple, feel-good, generalized platitudes that may or may not even apply to your own situation. Here's a good example. Personal growth and personal finance gurus are relatively aligned, and they give similar kinds of advice, often leaning toward this magical thinking of, if you can dream it, you can do it. Cool, I'm good with a vision board here and there, but when we get down to the nitty-gritty with personal finance gurus, there's always this budget system to follow. Again, cool, I'm good with getting real with our personal finances, but can that apply to everyone? If you're an hourly wage worker with a shifting schedule that's constantly unpredictable, how do you know how much you're ever going to make, especially when you factor in things like overtime? But what if you're like me and you're self-employed? Let me tell you, I can't stick to a budget because hell if I know how much money is coming in during any given month. I've never been able to follow advice from one of those gurus for that reason. Don't get down on yourself if you can't squeeze yourself into a cookie-cutter growth system. You just have to get creative and use common sense when it comes to moving forward. Back to my budget example, with me, I have an expense list of items I know I have to pay for every month, and any month I have excess income, I save. That way, if a month gets lean, I can draw on the good months to make up for it. But you're never going to hear about that in a personal finance guru book. 3, get an education and accept input from experts. When it comes to growth, you can't exist in a vacuum. You need to know what's around, what people are doing, what people in your field are doing, and ask around. Moreover, you've got to start looking at the cutting edge. What is coming next? For example, right now, I'm looking at the possibilities AI offers for increased productivity as a business owner, more as a generative tool for writing copy or creating social templates. And believe me, I am a paranoid type that worries about the machines taking over in the future, but I know if I don't get on board with this, I'm never going to move forward. You can't be scared of new developments in culture because society is going to move on whether or not you want it to. Sometimes you have to take a few steps back and time off in order to prioritize how you're going to move forward. Lastly, learn how to economize your time. Here's a hard truth that I don't like to accept. There aren't 25 hours in the day, so you can't do it all no matter what anyone tells you. When it comes to your own growth and moving forward, you have to ask yourself, what has to give? What really is your priority? For me, I've learned I need to take more time for myself in terms of actual downtime where I don't schedule a damn thing and I just sit around the house with my cat. Honestly, yes. I'm currently learning how to schedule time to do nothing because I have discovered that my own pace of running a business and constantly hustling is kicking my butt, and a lot of other aspects of my life are suffering as a result. I'm having to learn how to say no more often. I'm having to turn down offers, and as a lifelong people pleaser, that is hard for me to do. But we all need that. We all need time to ourselves. In closing, don't let the endless hustle burn you out. Don't let the grind chew you up and spit you out. It's okay to say no. It's okay to take a step back, to learn, to educate yourself, and to do something completely different. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you got any words of wisdom out of this one that work for you, let me know. I would love to hear from you. You can reach out to me on my website at stephcorbell.com. That's CORBELL. Or on any of my social media channels. Those are all linked in this episode description. Thank you again so much for listening today. And until next week, remember that you're more resilient than you realize and you're stronger than you know.